Oreimo. If you know, you know. If you don't, how? It's kind of hard to believe that Oreimo is over 10 years old now and that season 2 finished the same year I started watching anime. It's pretty infamous in the anime community for being a show about incestuous love and is also equally as infamous for its cop-out ending, which always confused me since people were already upset by the incest but then even more upset when the relationship didn't happen. There really is no pleasing weebs, huh? It's become one of those shows that everyone kind of loves to hate on for various reasons, and as someone with both an older and younger sister, I can confidently say that I actually unironically like Oreimo. I also kind of liked Yosuga no Sora, but I absolutely hate the irregular Magic High School, so in my defense, incest in fiction doesn't really mean much of anything to me. The biggest shame of these forbidden love stories isn't so much that they exist, but that the actual artistry tends to get overlooked because of the obvious elephant in the room. True, it is kind of asking a lot to ignore it, but my god, the music for these shows is so good, and Oreimo's in particular introduced me to Kosaki Satoru, who I consider to be the true face of anime music of the past 15 years or so. With so many well-known series under his belt, including The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, Lucky Star, the Monogatari series, Idolmaster, Beastars, and Vivy, Kosaki has demonstrated time and time again his ability to write music that fits the series, sounds amazing, and isn't tied down by any single style. It's a shame that he's relatively unknown in the anime community despite being the man responsible for things like Nei circulation. So as an appreciative glimpse into his works, let's delve into his soundtrack that would become one of Oreimo's biggest redeeming factors. I mean, just look at that title. Is there any better way to convey unbridled joy in an urban setting than an upbeat ska track? Kosaki is a master of conveying setting and atmosphere through music, something that is easy to understand simply by watching any of the shows that he has written the soundtrack for. Haruhi Suzumiya had some music like this, but also a lot of odd electronic tracks to reflect the sci-fi elements of the series. Bakemonogatari is stylistically avant-garde, and the music is equally as off-kilter without being so out there as to be indigestible, and Vivy was a fusion of rock orchestra and electropop mixes to reflect the creeping dystopian future surrounding a robot idol. Oreimo as a whole is generally upbeat, bright, colorful, and dumb fun, set in a standard modern-day Tokyo with a relatively normal cast of characters. Normal in the sense that, aside from the incest, they could all believably exist as real people. There are hundreds of ways a composer could interpret such a broad setting musically, and Kosaki seems to have found the most apt ways of doing so. Where many might associate urban settings with jazz, some kind of rock fusion, or even electronic music, Kosaki landed on ska. Ska obviously has roots in rock with its horns from jazz or big band, but often we associate it with tropical seaside settings over urban ones. Yet in spite of that, Kosaki has managed to write the music in such a way that it screams sunny urban metropolis instead of tropical city. The use of multiple horns draws an unconscious association to car horns, obviously associated with city traffic, and the ska guitar's backbeat makes it feel a bit looser and relaxed. In the case of this track, the tempo itself also feels a bit too fast for the laid-back sounds of a tropical setting, and the addition of an organ solo really helps sell you on an urban city sound. It isn't hard to capture the feeling of happiness through music, but to have the track itself convey such a sense of sunny warmth while still matching the physical setting of the story is a skill Kosaki never fails to deliver on. Here we have the character theme for Kyosuke's childhood friend Manami, a girl that by every stretch of the word is ordinary. She isn't as pretty as Kirino or best girl Ayase, she isn't as well-rounded as second best girl Kuroneko, she isn't as eccentric as Saori, and she doesn't have as much personality as Kanako. Her whole character is built around the concept of being plain, and it's these kinds of characters themes that often cause the most trouble for composers because there isn't really anything to base the music on. It needs to be boring, but not so boring that you won't want to listen to it, but it also can't be too interesting or else it makes the character seem more interesting than they should be. If it's too slow, it's tiresome, and if it's too fast, there's too much going on. It's a very fine line that needs to be walked, and one that quite honestly doesn't have much in the way of clear instruction. Now, it's hard to call something like this a stroke of genius, but the actual theme for Manami is extremely fitting, and atmospherically it still fits the world of Oreimo, something I can only imagine would have been quite difficult to accomplish given the chaos and eccentricity simplicity of the rest of the soundtrack. The harmonica has a very down-to-earth sound, almost as humanistic as the acoustic guitar, but without the inherent warmth. Having it play a fairly simplistic melody on top of a childish piano backing gives off the perfect sound for a character whose most redeeming qualities are that she's kind and wears glasses. In a way, the arrangement has a nursery rhyme quality to it, meaning you could easily swap out the harmonica for a group of children singing and it would still work. This is a clever way to both play on the idea that Manami is Kyosuke's childhood friend, as well as the fact that given how simple children's songs need to be, it makes her seem all that much more plain. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Kuroneko's theme, completely throwing us out of the Tokyo setting with a tango. While Kuroneko has nothing to do with Latin America, her theme is meant to convey something a little more broad, that she is one of the first eccentric characters to enter the story, alongside Saori, who also has a pretty wild stylistic shift for her theme. Though the premise of Kirino being a closet otaku is what the story is built upon, her regular life is depicted as being pretty normal, if not a bit more glamorous than most people's. Kuroneko, on the other hand, doesn't hide her otaku tendencies despite her humble upbringing already ostracizing her from society. And for someone like Kirino, that kind of lifestyle is foreign and almost incomprehensible. Tango is also a great style of music to represent Kuroneko's role in the story. The musical style is filled with passion, driven by sharp accordion chugs and castanet clicks, while a smooth violin solo and later piano glide across these sharp supporting sections. Out of context, tango music can come across as combative and fierce, and this is a perfect representation of Kuroneko and Kirino's friendly rivalry. More subtly, it also depicts the romantic feelings she develops towards Kyosuke, tango being one of the more flirtatious and sensual of the Latin ballroom styles, which again doubles down on the rivalry she has with Kirino in a secondary manner. While it may not necessarily capture the more shy, down-to-earth side of Kuroneko, it serves as a great basic introduction to the haughty character she puts on in public, acting in complete opposition to the plain girl Manami. Of course, not every piece of music can be fun and happy, especially in a story where dramatic shifts can happen at almost any moment. Most of the more serious and dark pieces in the soundtrack are piano solos, though in this case it's an acoustic guitar instead. While a piano is good at conveying feelings of isolation and loneliness, guitars are much warmer by nature, and because every issue in Oreimo is a result of mismatched expectations or feelings, it only makes sense to utilize the instrument most associated with human connections. By leaving out chords for a slow, purely fingerstyle guitar track, the melody cuts the warm richness of the instrument, leaving us with a sparse set of notes to depict the characters. While I can't recall exactly when this occurs or if it is a recurring piece of music in the series, any one of the fights or disagreements that Kirino finds herself in could fit here. Her separation from Ayase, fights with Kuroneko, her parents, or even some of the more serious clashes she has with Kyosuke. It's possible this isn't limited only to Kirino as well, since Kyosuke also gets into clashing situations with many of the same people, and thus the sad guitar can fulfill its role as a more general instrument over one that's tied to a single character and their relationships. I'll end it off with this piece here, serving as a nice resolution to the previous track. Like how the previous piece depicted the more serious human side of Oreimo's characters, this one shows it from the other side, after the characters have reached an understanding with one another. With only a piano and violin to convey these feelings, the music feels quite close and personal, and while an acoustic guitar certainly could have conveyed the warmth of the resolved feelings, this duet can express a wider variety of emotion. The violin itself is obviously an instrument strongly associated with romance, yet the style it plays in here is much simpler, allowing the track to fit into situations that are platonic as well. The piano never comes to the forefront, simply sticking to a gentle harmonic pulse to push the music along through a series of uncomplicated progressions. While there are a few diminished chords to add a bit of drama, this can be interpreted as the issue that the two had to resolve, of which the music also resolves nicely in the following bars. In conjunction, what we get is a simple but very pretty interplay between two instruments, a nice musical representation of two characters that have come to see eye to eye. It's also important to note that none of these more serious tracks ever become large epic orchestral pieces or grow in intensity over the course of their runtime. I tried to show off a wide variety of music from the series, but for the most part the soundtrack consists of simple ska tracks and silly comedic pieces, all of which sound amazing in their own right. This allows the viewer to stay more grounded in the situation and scale of what is happening, and is something that even some top composers slip up on from time to time. Like I mentioned earlier, Oreimo is a story about relatively normal people living in Tokyo, which, while it may seem like an urban fantasy land for those who have never visited, is still just a city at the end of the day. There is no grand story or deep thought-provoking tale to be told, it's just your everyday tale about a brother and sister who get swept up in otaku culture and then fall in love with each other. And with music to fit the storytelling as well as it does, I think that's all we can really ask for. I know that saying I enjoy Oreimo is gonna get me some questionable looks, but when you look past the incest and the cop-out ending, it actually has a lot of redeeming qualities. Sure, it's kind of trashy, but for me at least it's a lot of trashy fun, and with a soundtrack as good as this one, I'm pretty much sold on enjoyment. But I know that not everyone can base most of their enjoyment off of the music alone, so let me know down in the comments below if Oreimo's music made it any better for you, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to vote on future video topics and get access to all of my music transcriptions, make sure to support me over on Patreon. I know I didn't do a lot of music transcriptions for this video in particular, but trust me, the patron folder is filled with them. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.